Hi, I'm Mackenzie, and I'll be interviewing my grandpa, Richard Mick, who was flying for business on September 11th, 2001.
Okay, hi. I'm Richard Mick. I live in New York, and in the 90s and the 2000 years, I commuted to Chicago every week. I left on Tuesday mornings. On Tuesday, September 11th, I took off from New York around 7 a.m. on American Airlines, and I was flying to Chicago, and just had a normal flight for usually about a 2-hour flight, so about half an hour and 35 minutes. It was normal, and then all of a sudden, some people started gasping, and as you know, you can't use your phones on airplanes, but some people were getting their phones up and running, and we found out that the Trade Center had been attacked, or didn't know it was attacked, but it was damaged and coming down. By the time we got into Chicago, the news was spreading wider and wider and wilder and wilder. It was really, really something.
Did the flight attendants tell you anything when you were on the plane?
The flight attendants did not tell us anything. The pilot and the internal controller of the airplane I was on, which is, as I said, it was American Airlines, was very, very quiet about what was going on. And when we were taxiing in from the runway to O'Hare, they say that there's been some problems in New York, and we don't know what happened. We'll have to learn about it when we get back into the terminal, et cetera, et cetera.
Was the plane, do you think, scared that terrorists may have been on your plane because of the Sears Tower?
I don't get that feeling, because we didn't know what happened, and up until we got the news on the radio or on the cell phones, it was a normal flight. It was quite normal, so we didn't think of anything like that. I'm not sure there's some people on the plane that might have thought that, but overall, I don't think that was a prevailing thought, that our plane was possibly going to be hijacked, etc.
Yeah. And when you landed and got to the terminal, what exactly happened?
Well, we landed, and we taxied in. It took us a while to get in. When we got to the terminal, they unloaded the plane, and the terminal, which would normally be overwhelmingly packed at 9 o'clock in the morning, 8:30, 9:30 in the morning, was relatively empty. So they had already stopped all people going out. No planes were going out, and a few planes were allowed to land. One of them was mine. So the terminal was relatively empty. I'm talking about the part after you check in, the area where you would wait to take off, so to speak.
Do you know around when they began to cancel all the flights going out?
Well, they must have canceled before we got in, so I would assume we got in around 8:30 Chicago time or 9:30 New York time. So somewhere prior to that, I would say they canceled them probably within half an hour, 15 minutes of the actual problem that they had.
Yeah. And had the other planes crashed before you landed? The one at the Pentagon?
Yes. Yeah. The other plane. Well, at the time, we only knew of 2 planes that were involved. The 2 that hit the Trade Center in New York. We weren't aware of the one that landed in, I forgot, it was Pennsylvania. Yeah. That crashed, and the other one that went into the Pentagon. We weren't aware of those happening. Actually, not. Although it happened at the same time, we found out about it later.
Okay. And what was the mood at the airport like when everyone got off the plane and was in the airport?
The mood was very, very quiet. Everybody was like stunned and shocked, and we maybe half a dozen of us, maybe a little bit more, stopped at one of the restaurants or bars or something that had a TV, and we sat there and we watched what was going on, and everybody was like unbelievably flabbergasted that that this thing can happen.
And did you call home when you got to Chicago to ask what happened?
I think 10 o'clock, which would be about a half an hour after I landed.
And what did they say?
Well, I had trouble getting through because the circuits were so busy all the time. So they were happy to hear from me and happy to hear that I was okay.
And were people at the airport very scared?
Well, everybody was. I guess scared is as good a word as any you can use. Everybody was like concerned that nobody knew exactly what happened, and they weren't. It wasn't until we were in maybe 15 minutes that we learned that the trade towers had fallen or had crashed down as a result of the thing. So everybody was like unbelievably shocked, and shocked that they could have been part of it, and more shocked as that how many people got killed, et cetera, et cetera.
And how did you know the details that it was a terrorist attack then, or did you just know that 2 planes crashed?
We just knew it was 2 planes that crashed. We assumed it was a terrorist attack because planes aren't really allowed in that area, and one crashing into the trade center might have happened, but 2 crashing in was definitely not an accident. Had somebody figure out 2 plus 2 equals 4. That there was some kind of a plot to crash the planes into the trade centers.
Yeah. And was your work, because you came to Chicago to work, was that canceled or postponed, or how did you go on living after this happened while you were still in Chicago?
Well, I finally didn't get to the office until maybe 11 o'clock, which would be an extra 2 hours later. They normally would have. One, the plane came in a little late. 2, they slowly processed us through the thing, and then 3, we had we were watching TV and trying to figure out what was going on, and then getting a car to the office took a little bit of extra time. But I think everybody was looking at the TVs, wherever they were, trying to figure out what happened and why it happened and how it happened and who did it, and et cetera, et cetera. So there was very little work done that day in most places.
And could you get back to New York? How long were the airports closed for?
The airport, I finally got back to New York on Saturday. I drove back.
Were there no planes running at all, or just no planes going to New York?
And there was no planes were going to New York for sure. I'm not certain if there were any planes going anywhere until maybe Friday or Saturday. But by then, you couldn't get on them. They were all booked. A few planes that were flying.
And what was New York like when you got home?
Well, it was still in a very, very, very big state of shock. Because they had, there was at that point, there were 3 to 4, even 5,000 people were killed. It turned out to be just slightly under 3,000, but 3,000 a lot of people. And everybody was in shock. That's all I can say is everybody was quiet. They were trying to figure out, everybody knew somebody that got killed, or knew somebody that knew somebody that got killed. Because so many people were involved in the tragedy.
And how do you personally believe that 9/11 impacted America?
Well, they put in a lot of. Well, first of all, I think the Americans, or at least myself and people I talked to, felt that we were part of the world at that point. That we weren't just an isolated country that nothing bad ever happened to. Because this was really the first major attack on the United States from a foreign source, in I guess forever. So it was the first time that everybody realized that the world is getting smaller in terms of militarily. That we weren't just isolated out, and we could look at things and decide what we wanted to do about them. That people could do something to us.
And to this day, are there still memorials or remembrances in your community or for New York as a whole, or any of that?
Well, every year there's a memorial, and they read off the names of all the people that got killed on September 11th. It takes several hours to do so, but they read off all the names of all the people that got killed, and and many of the families of the deceased get together and go down to now the new World Trade Center area, and it's closed except for personal relatives of the deceased, and they have prayers and they remembrances and they do a lot of different things. But it's closed. It's closed to the public, open to only the families of the deceased. It was like you remembered, exactly what happened and how it happened, and there was a lot of people there, tourists and everything like that weren't around or weren't of age or et cetera. And they would just have to look at it as a memorial. But there's a lot of us that were impacted by it directly.